Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Going to talk some college football, even though it's college football off season. Well, I guess technically it's not, right? We're getting into that spring ball time, but we know that there's a ton of changes taking place in the world of college football, and I definitely want to give my thoughts on that and talk about the two main ones, transfer portal and NIL, and of course the comments from Nick Saban regarding those. So hang on with me, and we're going to get to that shortly. But before we do that, you know what time it is. If you're here already on YouTube and you haven't, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, that notification bell so you can be kept aware whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, please give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And of course, don't forget, put it on your calendar, mark it in your phone, set an alarm, whatever. Saturday nights at 7 p.m., we're going to be doing the live shows, talking sports, and you'll have the opportunity to call in, talk directly with me. If you like what I'm saying, you can tell me you like what I'm saying. If you don't like what I'm saying, you think I'm a hater, you think I'm not making any sense, you got your opportunity to call in and tell me that too. Diversity is the spice of life, right? Anyway, I'm looking forward to doing all that. So let's get right to it. All right. College football, as I mentioned, has changed a whole ton, and it's happening real fast. As we know, we just finished the last year of the 4-team college football playoff used to determine the college football playoff national champion. And that lasted, 10 years, right? 2014 to 2024. And so now, because of the incredible amount of money involved, obviously, and because it should be a more interesting product and people are going to love it, and we're getting into this whole mega conference thing, and we can talk about that on another episode. Now we've seen the playoff spread from 4 to a 12-team playoff, which is something I've been advocating for a while. I'm really cool with that. I think originally I had said an 8-team playoff would be ideal, but I'm also very good with 12. Anyway, we're going to talk about that, and here's the thing. Obviously, they saw how big the money was, and there's some other factors involved. But at the end of the day, we know it's all about money. In 2026, I believe we're going to spread out to 14-team playoff. So even better. Anyway, here's the deal. The two biggest changes in college football in the last couple of years are the legalization of NIL, name, image, and likeness, where a player can basically get paid to play. They don't want to call it pay for play, but that's basically what's happening now. But what it is a situation where players can be compensated for use of their name, image, and likeness. So now it's like they can get endorsement deals and they can sign autographs. You know, the same thing Johnny Football got jammed up for when he was in college. They can do that legally. They can go and make an appearance and get paid for it. They're all the players who opt in are getting paid for being in the EA college football game that's coming out this summer, which thank goodness we've been waiting for that for so long. But anyway, that's a different story. But anyway, we're seeing all these different ways that players can get paid. But at the end of the day, really, because there were no proper rules and guidelines set into place when this was all legalized, it's basically become pay for play. And you're hearing a lot of expressions such as the Wild Wild West, which is what you have when there's no rules or guidelines in place. The secondary thing that is a huge deal in college football or college sports, period, is the transfer portal. So basically that allows you, I think, one free transfer without having to sit out. I think that's the rule, one free. And then, you know, they're basically giving out waivers like candy. So you're seeing guys transferring all over the place. So without having to sit out, which I don't really have an objection to, because we've seen a lot of situations over the years where coaches go sit in somebody's living room, mom, dad, hey, I love this guy, and I'm going to be like a father figure to him away from home for the next 4 years, and I'm going to help him become a man, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, that player gets on campus, and then that coach got a better deal somewhere else, and they roll out, right? Because, hey, they can do that, right? That's their job. They have the opportunity. This is America. They get a better opportunity. They go somewhere else. But then the new coach comes in, and the new coach may have a new scheme and new coaching staff and new recruits that they bring with them. And now this kid that got recruited for the old coach, he's left in the lurch, right? Now he has no scholarship. Maybe he has no place to go, or not another school that wants him, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm definitely good with the transfer portal and students being able to, or quote unquote student athletes being able to move on when the situation is not to their great benefit. Now, that said, we can look at that a couple ways, right? Back in the day, you used to see situations where if a player's not playing or something happens, they wait their turn, they work hard, they get an opportunity, they take advantage of it, they overcome adversity. That's one of the biggest things that we hear about college football. And Now, mind you, NIL and transfer portal, those basically go to all the sports, but I'm mainly referring in this one to college football because the main guy that we're going to talk about here in a bit is Nick Saban, and he's arguably the greatest college football coach of all time. So anyway, that's also the main revenue producing sport. That's why I'm focusing so much on college football. But anyway, it's a situation where now players don't get stuck in the lurch when the situation doesn't work out for them. But again, in life, there's pros and cons to everything. So you're hearing a lot of the more, I guess, was the older coaches who are used to doing things a certain way. They're complaining about NIL. You heard Dan Mullen complain about it. Nick Saban doesn't like it. You heard Dabo Swinney not liking it. And I think a big part of that is there's a couple of reasons, right? Back in the day, before NIL and this transfer portal, you had a lot of power over your organization, being your school and your program, and you had a lot of power over this student athletes who played in said program. You could lord a scholarship over their head, and you could do this and that and mistreat them if you so felt like it. And a lot of times that player didn't have a whole lot of recourse or a whole lot of option on what to do about it. But now these players are getting money too, and they're being recruited, courted heavily at other schools to get money constantly. And also they have the opportunity to transfer without sitting. So they're like, hey, I don't got to take this. I'm not going to deal with that. So that's good and that's bad, right? Again, never going to sit here and talk about players shouldn't be able to be compensated for the literal blood, sweat, and tears that they give to the university. For instance, we talk about how much money that these players and these programs make, the two revenue producing sports, football and basketball, for their schools. For years, Nick Saban has been the highest paid employee of the state of Alabama. Like, think about that. The college football coach is the highest paid employee in the state, not the governor, who has much more important duties, but the football coach. And it could be argued that Saban is still underpaid for the amount of money that the University of Alabama football program has generated for the state. But that's a whole different discussion. That's a side discussion. But the point is, these coaches are making a killing, right? So why can't the students be compensated? And a big part of it is, again, they don't want these students to have that power. And so Nick Saban was on Capitol Hill. He was at Congress yesterday, and basically he was giving his thoughts on NIL, because I think what's happening here is, and it's not going to happen, because once basically, what is it? Once the cat's out of the bag or whatever, the genie's out of the bottle, you can't put it back in, right? And so because the NCAA did a poor job of getting ahead of this whole thing, they were forced by the Supreme Court to basically allow all this. And then when they did allow all this, they didn't put any proper guidelines in place. So now, like we said earlier, it's the Wild Wild West, and it's just all over the place. And so now they're trying to, seemingly at a congressional level, put some sort of guidelines in place, but it's probably not going to end up working. So let's hear Saban. He was there and he had a lot to say, but what I did was I cut about 5 different pieces from his statements, and instead of playing it all at once, because it can get pretty long, I cut it into pieces, and I'm going to play one, come back and talk about what I thought about the commentary, and then go on to the next. All right, so we're going to do it that way instead of sitting listening to one long clip. All right, so let's go.
You're trying to develop value-based system, just like a value-based business, that would create opportunities for young people to be more successful. So this started with personal development. It started with academic support to make sure guys graduated and prepared themselves for when they couldn't play football. And also the whole concept of branding and making sure you had an image out there that was going to be something that would be enhance your chances of being successful and create opportunities for your future, and see if you can develop a career as a football player.
So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think Saban is lying. I take that really seriously when you accuse somebody of lying, but I will say that a lot of those comments sound disingenuous. I don't have a problem with the branding piece, right? But I found it interesting. One of the first things he said was talking about the academic support. I really don't believe that, because basically what it is a lot of these big time schools, they don't care about that. They just want to keep kids eligible so that they can get on the field and play and continue to bring in that money. So even though it's only a very small percentage of players that make it to the next level, whether it's football or basketball, it's a really tiny percentage, comparably, of course, to the amount that play in high school and then go on to play in college. So anyway, you look at that and you say, no, you need more people. We don't believe you. And then you say, okay, now he's talking about at the very end of that clip, develop you as a football player. Now, that's cool if you develop as a football player good enough to play on the next level. But seriously, most of these schools, again, and most of these coaches just want you good enough so that you can contribute to them winning championships, and that way they can continue to get paid and demand pay raises. Now, for a guy like Saban or a guy like Ryan Day at Ohio State, at the big schools, the more players you put into the league, basically that maximizes your recruitment opportunities. So I totally get that. So yeah, to some extent, there's develop you as a football player, but I don't put too much stock in that. It's develop you enough so that you can help me win and I can keep getting money. All right, let's check out the next clip.
Now, what we've done between freedom to transfer and creating a free agency system where guys can transfer whenever they want to transfer, and the whole idea that we've created a pay-for-play sort of model in college athletics have created some issues in being able to actually have a program and a system that would enhance those very values that I just talked about.
All right, cool. So pay for play system, clearly he's not happy with that, because again, it greatly reduces the amount of power that these guys have. The transfer system, I don't mind the transfer system. My biggest thing is there's got to be guidelines, right? So y'all know this, if you've been here with me on the show. I'm a military guy, right? I'm retired Army. And so I greatly respect having rules, regulations, and guidelines for things. Now, I understand that the civilian world does not work the same as the military. However, a great deal of things from the military could be instituted in the civilian world and help things run more smoothly. I can be in the Army in Virginia, which I was, and then I can go to the Army in Korea, which I did, and there would be small changes because different unit commanders tend to do different things differently, but the overarching standards, guidelines, rules, and regulations of the United States Army are the same. I'm not going someplace different and something totally different is happening. And so it's like all these college football programs are technically under the NCAA, but I could go to school at Colorado and it could be one thing, and then I could go to school at Notre Dame and it could be something totally different. Why? Because there's not overarching governance. And to me, that's problematic. That causes problems. I don't really like it. They need to find a way to some extent, standardize this transfer window. And when it comes to NIL, this is pretty simple to me with the money, right? If you really want to do it and you want to make it work, make these guys employees. Stop playing around. Get one overarching government body for big time college football, which used to be the Power Five. So I guess the Power Four and the Group of Five, right? So you get one major governing body. Even if you have a board and not just one person, that's fine. Same way you got the College Football Playoff Committee. Make some type of board that governs this stuff. And then you can kind of get an idea of how to standardize where the transfer window would be based on the semester start-stop dates of all the different schools. That would take some work, but you can work it out. There's enough money involved. You can make it work. Also, make these guys employees. Then you set up some sort of players union for college football. You set up some sort of players union so they can have a say, and then you standardize it, start making contracts, because these dudes are basically employees anyway, right? You're paying them anyway. So now you start getting contractual obligations. Boom. Now you can start standardizing things. Everybody wins. The players get their money. The players get to transfer. The coaches in the schools get their money, and you get to keep on playing college football, which everybody loves. Now, it's time we do away with this nonsensical, imaginary student athlete amateurism crap, because we know it's not real and hasn't been real for a long time. Next.
How do we continue to create some kind of a model moving forward where we do improve the quality of life of the student athlete, but create some kind of a balance in terms of competitive balance, which all venues have some guidelines and rules that create some kind of competitive balance, which right now we don't have in college athletics. It's whoever wants to pay the most money, raise the most money, buy the most players is going to have the best opportunity to win.
Okay, can we stop this fake argument for competitive balance? Now, I'm all about competitive balance. I argue with my boys about this all the time. I am all about competitive balance. The NFL seems to do the best job of creating competitive balance. Yes, you have some teams that are clearly better than others, and that's all going to lead to individual leadership. But because of the fact that they have a salary cap, and I'm not necessarily saying that college football needs a salary cap, but you get the premise. They do. The NFL does everything they can to create parity, and the NFL, I've talked about this time and time again, is the league that you see with the most worst to first and first to worst switches every single year. And that's because of parity. Now, that's also because of the physical nature of the game of football, and injuries plays a major role there too. But at the end of the day, they do a great job creating competitive balance and parity. Now, unfortunately, college football has never been that, right? I didn't hear Saban complaining about competitive balance and parity when this guy was winning six championships in 15 years as Alabama head coach. Do I have that right? And of course, he had another one at LSU prior to going to the NFL. So I didn't hear him complaining about that. And when we're talking about who can raise the most money and who could buy the most players, man, who are we kidding? We know that most of these big time schools have been paying players under the table anyway. This whole bagman thing, you had bagmen just to convince guys to go on visits. Furthermore, bagmen when guys were actually playing ball. Most of the big time schools been doing that. So let's stop Saban acting like people don't know that this stuff is going on. And this is not my opinion. We've seen NFL players and former college football players come out and say it. We've seen former college football players get busted for it. We know this is not new. So I don't know why he's acting like, oh, well, talking about we want competitive balance and all that. You don't have competitive. You had no issue with the lack of competitive balance when you were dominating. The SEC has no issue with lack of competitive balance as long as their schools are winning championships all the time. So the competitive balance thing, nah, that's ridiculous. Competitive balance, I think, creates a sport that even more people love, because even though college football is the second most popular sport in the country, what we were having with the SEC dominance for like a 15, 20-year stretch, where 5 different teams won championships, which is absolutely crazy for one conference. But anyway, when we had that stretch, what you were seeing was you were losing out on a lot of the viewership and a lot of the attention from where? The Northeast, which is a major sports market. It's not a major college football market, but it's a major sports market. You were losing out on a lot of the attention from where? The West Coast, which is a major sports market, right? We know that the coasts are where 60% of the American population lives. So if you're losing out on that, imagine how much money that is. But the SEC don't care because they have their little pocket of the country and they're dominating that, and they're dominating the sport. So they're getting the money. But think about how much more money could be available for all involved if there was what? Competitive balance and parity, right? If you had schools from different parts of the country. Like this last college football playoff was really cool in that you had Texas, you had Alabama, you had Michigan, and you had Washington. So you had a really good dispersal of the talent and a good representation of a lot of the country. So, I like that. I thought it was good. So you can miss me, Saban, with the fake competitive balance argument, because it's ridiculous. All right, next up.
That's my major concern, the combination of pay for play, free agency, and how that impacts development. And I can attest that I've had 2 NFL coaches tell me, and this is a football deal because they're concerned about the football part, that the players come to them less developed, with more entitlements and less resiliency to overcome adversity.
All right, so this was interesting when he talked about the football coaches thing, the NFL coaches, I'm sorry. And I believe that because Alabama in his time there has consistently been a football factory for sending guys on to the NFL. So Saban obviously is he's well in communication with so many NFL coaches and scouts, etc. So I get that. So I totally believe him when he says this. Now he says these NFL coaches are talking about how entitled these players are coming into the league. And I have no doubt about that. For instance, we see it with Caleb Williams right now, a sense of entitlement for a guy who has not done anything yet on the professional level. And I personally really don't like that. But anyway, that's a different show for a different day. But the point I'm trying to make is I totally get it when he talks about the entitlement of the modern player walking into the league. And a lot of that is when you've been a star somewhere first and when you've gotten money, you don't feel like you have to work as hard. So you feel like you're entitled. Now, when you are out there trying to make your spot and trying to earn your money and you're willing to grind more, you want it more, you want it badly. And so you're willing to do more to get it. So I get that. Also, to some extent when he talks about the players being less developed. I get that as well, because if you're transferring a lot, you don't have the opportunity to really learn and develop over time, right? So I get that. I get that. And it makes a lot of sense. All right. Next up, and this is the final clip right here.
All the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. So it's always was about developing players. It was always about helping people be more successful in life. My wife even said to me, we'd have all the recruits over on Sunday with their parents for breakfast, and she would always meet with the mothers and talk about how she was going to help and impact their sons and how they would be well taken care of. And she came to me, like right before I retired and said, why are we doing this? And I said, what do you mean? She said, all they care about is how much you're going to pay them. They don't care about how you're going to develop them, which is all what we've always done. So why are we doing this? So, to me, that was sort of a red alert that we really are creating a circumstance here that is not beneficial to the development of young people, which is why I always did what I did.
So again, the word salad. This sounds like a bunch of crap to me. I'm gonna be honest. And again, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you Saban is lying. I'm not in the guy's head, but I am gonna tell you it sounds disingenuous. Why you did what you did was for the development of young people. Seriously, all that money you made, the car dealerships you own. I know for a fact he owns a Mercedes dealership in Tuscaloosa, and I think there's something else. But all that, being the highest paid employee in the state of Alabama, the highest paid state employee in the state of Alabama for years, you did that so you could develop young people. Come on, man. You did it for the dough. You did it for the dough. You know that, and everyone else knows that. Now, if there was some development of young people along the way, cool. If you help some young people get to the league along the way, cool. Because what? That brings more recruits and more talented players to the University of Alabama. I get it. I get it. But don't sit here and tell us that you had to wonder, why are we doing this? Come on, man. You know what time it is. We know what time it is. And again, I think it's so disingenuous for Saban to sit there and play the saint. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but just be honest. The real truth is you didn't want to deal with the changing landscape. And I get it. Number one, you're an older guy. Number two, you don't have to deal with the changing landscape. You're a 7-time national champion. And again, widely regarded as the greatest college football coach of all time. It's probably not too much argument on that. Okay. And you've got all the money, you've got all the laurels, you've got all the accolades, you've done it all. So you don't have to deal with anything at this point that you don't want to. So I totally get it, but you don't have to sit there and fake the funk. And what is it? You don't got to lie to kick it, right? You don't got to lie to kick it. So we got to stop this. We got to stop this. So at the end of the day, my thing is this. Yes, college football, NIL, transfer portal does need some guide rails. They do. They need to make the student athletes, the players, employees. They need to contractually pay them. They need to pay them directly. Let's stop with this NIL. That's the real problem. You don't want to pay them directly, so you can't have any control over how they get paid, how much they get paid, blah, blah, blah. That's the real problem. If you want to have some measure of control, what you need to do is pay them directly and make them contractual employees of the school. That's the easiest way to do this. The other part is we need an overarching body controlling the Power Four and the Group of Five. That's what needs to happen. And of course, the independents, right? I mean, this is, I think it's relatively easy to do that. And then once you have that overarching governing body, then you get a players union together, and you also appoint a board to oversee this, make decisions, vote on stuff. It doesn't seem like it has to be that difficult. Everybody wins. But at the end of the day, the fact is, it seems like they simply don't want players to get paid, and they don't want players to be able to transfer. And that's just not cool. Now, is the sport that we all love of college football changing drastically? Yes. Is it changing for the better? Depends on how you look at it. I love the fact that the playoff is expanding. I love the fact that you may see some more parity. You may see some more competitive balance. You may. I doubt it, because at the end of the day, it's going to continue to come to whoever can pay the most. Now, with that said, you have more schools who can openly pay, right? And so you have more, especially with the transfer portal, you have a greater division of talent, right? So it's if I'm at Alabama and I'm third on the depth chart, even though I was a 5-star recruit, well, maybe I could go to USC now. or maybe I could go to, I'm just picking schools, Washington now, or maybe I could go to, Wisconsin now, right? So instead of being a third on the depth chart running back, even though I was a 5-star, now I go somewhere else and play, and maybe I can make a difference in their program. And now we see that program rise up and have more opportunities to be successful, because you don't have one team or one conference hoarding all the talent, or the majority of the talent. So that's what I think about it. But I know this was a long one, but I thought it was a really important thing to comment on. And don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that there's a whole lot of different viewpoints on this, and I'm fully aware that there's a whole lot of different subtext to this, that it would probably take days to try and get to all of it. But these are my initial thoughts on it. Maybe not initial. I've thought about this a bit, and I've talked to people about this a bit, but these are my thoughts on it. So what I want to know from you, do you think Saban was full of it when he was talking all of this? Do you think that college football, NIL especially, and transfer portal need some guidelines? Do you think they need an overarching body? Leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you. Can't wait to get back to you. Make sure you like and subscribe. And of course, make sure you tune in at 7 p.m. on Saturday night for the live show. And I'm out. Peace.